Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai, and today I'm here in the garden of Xavier Martinez and we're going to be working on this great big juniper. So how long have you had this tree? Just a little bit of background.
I've had this since 2014. I got a batch of about 4 or 5 of them. All that's happened is it got repotted 2 years ago.
I've just been studying this tree for like the past 5 minutes. It's quite a challenge. It's very similar to Itoigawa, but the foliage is just a little bit more coarse. Yeah. Could be a common juniper. It's a little bit yellow for that. Has this always been yellow?
Truthfully, no. It's been greener over the last couple of years. You see some of the lower foliage has got just a slight greener tinge to it, so I probably need to look at doing something with that.
Tell me a little bit about why we're doing this challenge today.
Truthfully, I'd love to say it was because I didn't know what to do with it, but I want to try and get a different perspective. I mean, for me, I had some easy ideas of perhaps changing the potting angle because of that very, very straight trunk, a bit of wire and sort of bringing branches down, compacting the growth closer, probably removing or defining a little bit more of the apex. It's very, very heavy, the apex.
Yes.
And truth, it was going to be something I was going to do over the next 2 or 3 weeks. If you're going to make the effort to come out, it'd be nice to give you a challenging but reasonably decent tree to work on. The
tools that I will be using throughout this video today are some bonsai scissors, branch cutters, and some Jin pliers. If you're just a complete beginner to bonsai, you don't absolutely need all of these specialized bonsai tools, although they do help you get certain jobs done a little bit easier. You just want to ensure that whatever tools that you are using are clean and sharp. Clean so we don't introduce any bacterial or fungal infections to our trees, and sharp because a sharp blade on one of your tools will give you a much cleaner cut, and in horticulture clean cuts heal so much faster and more efficiently than a blunt cut that was squashed by a dull blade. Instead of using aluminium wire, today we're going to be keeping some copper wire on hand. It's a little bit trickier to work with than aluminium, but it holds the branches just slightly better, and it looks a lot nicer on the branches because a thinner piece of copper wire will hold a branch where a thicker piece of aluminium would need to hold. There's lots of that sort of classic flaky bark, and by taking a knife, this is just any old knife, doesn't have to be anything fancy, you can carefully peel off this flaking bark. I personally really like the red color that's under the flaky bark of these types of junipers, so I would peel this off. And just here, if you would like to bring out some of the nice color of the bark, you can take just a little bit of oil. I'm going to use some Camellia Oil. I've seen others use things like walnut oil. You just rub that into the trunk, and as you can see, that nice red color is really coming out here. Going to go a little bit more around here. As you can see, this little piece here, we went a little bit too far. That's okay, that will heal over, it's just a little bit, but do be careful when you're removing the bark. So I'm just gonna get the oil all around here, and as you can see, just look at that piece there. Look at that beautiful color. I give this pot just a light layer of oil just to make it look a little bit nicer. Immediately I'm thinking I want to tilt this tree because this part of the trunk is very straight, and even, you know, this could be a front. You could make this work, tilt it that way maybe, and have this as front branch coming that way, have this as the apex, cut off this back branch. That's another option. This could work where the tree would be tilted more that way. Usually we want to try and avoid sections that are very straight because the more movement in a trunk, I think it makes it more interesting.
I think you've identified probably one of the things that has been the biggest single issue with this tree is that section, and probably the reason why it's still sitting in the garden untouched. There's a big argument that you could actually consider splitting it. And using trunk splitters, get some raffia around it, and then you can start putting some movement actually into the lower part.
That is definitely an option.
That is an option.
I don't know if I'd want to go and split this because I really like how this is, and over time, even though you can split it and it will re-heal, you will see it.
Yeah.
And I really like just how this tree is naturally. So I'd like to work with what the tree has given us.
I don't know if you can see, you just swizzled it and I saw just a glimpse of very subtle movement in out there. So there is slight movement. It's not a lot, but it does mean that would require it to be a very defined front. Yeah. Which I think with this tree we need to decide, or you need to decide.
That definitely is one option, and what I love about really challenging junipers and trees like this is there is many options that you can choose from. You know, you don't always have to be stuck, and sometimes people get stuck because there's too many options. For me, I'm not really the biggest fan of how this looks. I mean, you could make it work. You could make quite a credible bonsai from there, but for my money, I think there's more movement here. And even if you were to tilt the tree this way, do you want the apex directly under the base, like here? Imagine a straight line there, and then the triangle goes from there. Or in some trees, you can put it off center and it can go more that way. You could even go that way with it, have it there, so you can really give it a dramatic tilt. I think I'm going to put something under here because this is probably, I would like the apex of this tree to be directly under the base. I've got a rock here.
I definitely agree with you. It has to be on a tilt, but I can still see. I know it's gentle, but there is definitely a little movement in that trunk.
You know what could be interesting too? We took off this branch and took off this branch. And we had a pad here, and then a pad here. So it's a very one-sided tree with just 3 here and nothing there.
Potentially, I can't say properly, but there's a bit of flexibility in these closer ones.
Yeah.
And then it's whether or not you do anything with that, or actually that indeed itself becomes gin. But I do think that in its own right has got to be gin, and then you just use future growth from this, mirroring the shape, perhaps.
But then what if we go this way? You cut all that off there and have that as the tree. Not going to do that, but that's an option.
I think it's amazing when you do that, because sometimes I did a video on tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And you stick to sort of what you think are the basics, and when you do angle change, you don't do big angles, but sometimes you lose the fact that what about if completely, and when you popped it that way, I was looking at that and thinking, and then you could do a little bit of wiring with these.
So if we have it this way, and you cut off all this, even air layer, off this big thick piece and start with this as the tree. I don't think it works in this case because of the angle.
If you look, it's practically a 90-degree angle anyway, and you add that to the straightness of the trunk. There's 2 things there.
I think we just gin this right now before we... it's a very uncomfortable branch. Yeah, let's get rid of it.
I'll definitely confirm my original plan that was going to get ginned off.
Great. To make a gin on this branch, first I'm simply going to just remove all the foliage. Just cutting this off with the bonsai scissors. Doesn't have to be perfect because I like to leave them a little bit long, because sometimes a gin with all these little tendrils can be quite interesting. You don't always have to do that, but just keep it, give it a go, and if it doesn't work, you can always reduce it back later. And of course, any of these pieces that we have cut off can easily be made into cuttings. All you have to do is strip off the foliage on the bottom half of the cutting, dip it into some hormone rooting powder, put it into soil. You want the cutting planted half the depth as the cutting is long. Keep it in a nice warm and humid environment and it should root. Here we're just throwing the cuttings into this basin of water as we work on the tree, and this just helps keep them hydrated so that they don't dry out, and then we can pot these up later. So to make this gin, I'm just creating what's known as a stop point, and that is whenever I start peeling the bark back, it doesn't go and trail down the tree. Taking a knife, I'm going around the trunk. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a nice clean line. Then with the gin pliers, we're just simply going to take these and crush the bark the whole way along this branch, just squeezing it. As you can see, when we do this, this bark just easily flakes off. Gonna make sure that this is nice and cut here. This is at the stop point. You can just peel that down. Now we're just thinking about this branch. And I'm thinking immediately, my brain is saying, get rid of this branch altogether. Don't even gin it. Just completely remove it.
Definitely, I'll put a blanket over that. I mean, there's no doubt that when you see it without it, it works. You know that has to come off because you've got 2 branches that are basically running parallel to each other.
Yeah.
This has got so much more flexibility. If we remove, that was the original plan, I was going to remove that. What's it looking like?
Okay, we've got lots of flex in this. This can come down and fill this space nice. Look at this. That'll come here. I flatten that out as a pad, and that will just give us that really nice...
I can sense the excitement here.
Yeah, this will work. This is definitely...
So that one's going too.
This can come down here. All this will fill, and it will look kind of sort of like a skeleton of how the final thing is going to look, but we'll just get the sort of the bones in place. When it grows in time, it will get thicker and thicker and thicker, and then it will all be nice and filled in.
I think, isn't it? It's wonderful because you do it with deciduous as well. You've got to build the actual structure first, and sometimes it's a bit scary about how much you've got to remove.
Yeah, I mean, all bonsai have to look bad for some time before they look good.
Some of them look bad for a long time.
Yeah. Many years. So I think without thinking about it.
So the only thing is do we actually want to have any sort of gin on that, or would that be distracting?
I would think it would ruin the flow, especially with it coming
I agree with you entirely.
On the inside.
Well, let's just get rid of it. So we'll do the big Nigel cut. It's gone.
And then just over the top of this, I'm going to put a little bit of cut putty. We're just putting this over the wound here, and this brown cut putty just blends in really nicely with the trunk. This will encourage better healing. I'm pretty happy with that. On this section of the tree, we've just decided to add a little shari, and that is just simply exposing the wood under the bark here. And I think you were saying, Xavier, it works sort of naturally with this upper part, right?
As you see where the original damage of the branch coming down, if we extend it down, you could realistically see it dying off down there in nature, so it would make sense to follow that line.
So we'll just do just a little point, I'd say, down to here.
And I think the good thing about when you do stuff like that is you can slowly expand it each year, because it will roll over and form that natural rollover that we love, but you can widen it as it establishes a good healthy live vein up the back.
See, even if you were to just make it now, let it roll over, cut it back, roll over, cut it back, you'll get these striations on the edges. In bonsai, we use the 2-branch principle, and this is simply wiring 2 branches together with 1 piece of wire. So here I've got some copper wire. I'm first just going to measure, and this is 1.8 millimeter or 13 gauge copper wire. So I'm just going to simply measure it along the branch. Then we can go just a little bit up this one. Cut that here. Just using some wire cutters. I'm going to come around the branch nice and tight. You want this to really hold this in place. And as you put copper onto a branch, it hardens on the tree and you get a lot more control over the branch. So I'm just going to put 1 on here. With this one I'm going to come up and around. This is just more to anchor it. Let's see how that holds. A little bit springy, so I'm going to put a 2nd piece on. I've wired this branch. We'll come back, shape this later. Now I'm thinking in the future I'd like this branch to be pulled down this way. Now you can achieve this with coiling wire, but in this case we're going to apply what's known as a guy wire, and that is just simply applying a tension wire to pull a branch in a direction. We're going to tension this branch down to this Jin. We're going to use this as an anchor point. To do this, we're simply going to take some 1.2 millimeter or 17 gauge copper wire, just measure it around. Xavier has given me this little piece of rubber tubing for the wire to go into. That way when this presses on the tree, it's not going to scar it. I just want to make sure I don't get it caught in any of the foliage. Xavier is going to hold the top of this for me, that way it doesn't slide. If you just push the branch down and see how we go with the bending, that's good there. And I'm just going to twist the end. And before we tighten off this wire and apply some tension, we're just going to remove these Jins, because although they are nice, I don't think they add anything to the tree anymore because of the new design we're going for. So Xavier's just going to cut them off. What do you think? You agree, or?
I hadn't thought about it very much. Oh,
right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, to be fair, originally they were just branches that I didn't like, and ginned until I could decide what to do with them. So
then here I'm just going to take, this is just a piece of aluminium wire. We put this in, give it a little twist. This just helps you apply tension gradually. So after a few twists, as you can see here, we can just slowly get this where we want it. You can always go overboard with this step because it, feels nice to twist it, but really don't go too far. Not in the sense that you'd snap the branch, but sometimes overbending a branch can make it look a little bit weird or unnatural. Here we've got a little bit of a curve, but I can see this being natural. Imagine in the wild, perhaps there was a snow load on this branch and it bent it down one year. It can happen. So
I've actually got a picture of snow loading that branch down.
Oh, this very tree?
Yeah.
Oh wow, well there you go. I don't want to go too far. Like just a little bit of tension. Even if you want to give it a little bit of extra tension, see, like how would that do?
Well,
it's too much.
I've certainly found anyways that the good thing about having it, and the whole purpose is that you put the initial tension on, then a week or two later, because of course the tree then starts reassigning and relayering its healing and steadier and strong thing, and then you do it again. Yeah. And slowly over time, over say 2 or 3 months, you drop it further and further. And I've certainly done that with a couple of other trees. That I think that's enough.
Any more and this would get too dramatic and it would look a little bit unnatural.
The thing is looking about in line with how that one is versus how that one is. You didn't take it too far down, it's going to look wrong. It's going to actually start crossing the Jin.
What I'm going to do now is just apply more copper wire of various gauges depending on the thickness of branch to the entire tree. That way everything's ready to set up before styling. As I was wiring, I was just printing off, as you can see, there's lots of foliage. This is all I've removed down here. And when it comes to Juniper Bonsai in particular, you don't really want to remove any more than 1/3 of the overall foliage of the tree. And with this, it's really getting there. So I don't want to prune any more today. I just want to ensure that this tree's momentum keeps going. But with the wiring, what I'm going to do is try and make this tree as compact as possible, try and push the growth back. And how I'm going to do that is simply wire the branches in bands, and by doing that, pushes the growth back a little. So this one, I already know I want this to come down this way. And as I turn and twist this branch, we're tightening the wire as we go. Okay, I can see it tearing, so at that point I'm just going to stop. Here I'm going to come up, just giving it a little bit of movement, and then with this part here we can come that way. You can get really tight bands like this. So we just want to space this out evenly so that there's space for these ones to grow into all these gaps in the future, and that will become a nice dense pad in time.
I think we've reached the point though, Adam. Very early on we were talking about the potential issues of having almost 3 from the same junction. There was going to have to be a decision. I was going to make a call early to remove one of them when I was going to do some wiring. Yeah. And you said hold on. But truly, do you think there's a time?
One of them needs to go. I think you can get rid of this bottom one growing straight down. You can get rid of the top one growing straight up. I think this one needs to stay.
I love the move. If you look at the movement from a distance, it looks good. And it is a solid branch. If I was going to go anywhere, I'd turn and say, let's get rid of that one.
Yep. Okay, let's go for it. I think we just take these, go through everything. Yeah. Through the wire, through the everything.
Timber.
Done.
I mean, the thing about the APC is very, very personal, but ultimately what you're trying to do, what you're seeing now isn't necessarily going to be the final design. What you're looking for is a sustainable structure that's going to allow the buds that are going to be a lot closer in. This stuff is going to end up getting cut off. What I'm trying to do is create something that looks good and appealing now, but gives you the branch that you need the budding from. And actually what I want is the little budding that's going to come from in here, in these junctions. It's making it pleasing to the eye now, but recognizing that ultimately all this growth out here is going to go in the long-term design. But so this great big long one here is going right across, is out of scale with the rest. So we can pull it back a bit with a little cut.
What if we went really bendy with it? Really tight.
And bring it in. I think sometimes
Look at that. Oh,
the issue is to get that compact.
And then one of these will eventually become another one. It'll go up eventually.
Yeah.
We did it. That's it. I'm going to just go around the tree and take off some of just the terminal ends, even just to see if all you're taking off is just that tiny bit.
I'm actually not sure about having it.
Yeah, keep it for now, because you might end up eventually
cutting back to there. This will taper. That will be the new leader. We have just finished styling this tree. This is a first styling, so this tree looks a little bit like a skeleton now. We've given it just a basic shape, the apex directly above the base. There's so much work to be done on this tree in the future. I would say this year, high nitrogen and even foliar feeding with this tree. See how it responds to that, and if it does well, to try and get as much growth as possible on the top, and then you'll have even more to work with. And you'll notice every time you wire from this point, you'll just be using less and less wire. Yeah. Until you have something that's just sort of a nice... I mean, I have to say, Adam, I'm absolutely over the moon. It's absolutely ecstatic. It's incredible. And yes, I know there's people out there probably going, yeah, but you could cut this back and this one isn't quite in the right place. And I think it's important to listen and see what Adam was actually saying.
We could make it look really good right now.
Like a finished.
But it would be too much. I don't want to stress this tree. And because the foliage is a little bit on the yellowy side.
Is there a solution for something like that?
You can green up the foliage, but that's more a temporary solution. You can mist it with a solution of Epsom salts, so half a tablespoon to 1 litre of water, I have found. Mix it up in a spray bottle, mist the foliage. You got it right here.
You mean like that?
Okay, yeah, that's the very one. And mist it on the foliage. Sorry.
My glasses are all fogged up now.
But I wouldn't treat this as a solution to another, like a real problem in the roots, so just lots of nice fertilizer in the roots.
Ginning, I know there's a temptation sometimes to get some lime sulfur on there straight away. And I've done both. Yeah. But no, I've also seen a lot of people actually saying, do you know what, you want to let that wood harden, dry out, give it 6-9 months, and probably put the lime sulfur on next year.
Just let it, you can even leave it for a year, let it naturally age, get a little bit of character, because as it dries, it kind of cracks and you get these nice textures. I would do that. Sometimes I'd be a little bit impatient to just go on with the lime, especially with like if you're doing only Sharis.
Yeah.
I would do lime sulfur, and then I find this can actually stop the callousing. But if you want it to callus, just leave it.
So it is, hold up. But while you've just done that, I'd like you to just give it a 180.
Oh,
because
right,
we
okay,
were
yeah.
in a bit of a dilemma.
We were thinking having maybe this is the front because of this feature. You could have that as the front. I mean, there's more than some trees have more than one front. So this could be.
I think
a front in
when
the future.
more growth starts back budding and coming on, I could see this.
Yeah, you could have this. When do you plan? I would say maybe repot
I will probably go next
year or the year after.
Definitely, it's going to be definitely either next year in the late. I do with the junipers. I've done the late summer repots.
Yeah.
But whatever happens, it's going to be a year.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to stay in your place and into your garden today. It was just a pleasure to work on one of your trees.
Do you know what? To actually see you up close and to see how much detail you put into all aspects of the bonsai, for someone who's been doing it in a relatively short time, I'm blown away. This is a good first styling, and I don't mean to be. I'm absolutely over the moon.
Thank you.
Absolutely over the moon. It's fantastic.
And there you guys have it. On that, I'm going to end off this video right here. Be sure to check out Xavier's channel. It is at Xavier's Bonsai Retreat, and I will also leave a link to his channel in the description of this video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like on this video. It really helps out the channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And let us know down in the comments what you thought of the styling today. Perhaps you would have done something differently. I'm always open to new and different ideas in bonsai. If you would like to support me and the things that I do on this channel, hit the thanks button down below. Or if you would like to become a channel member, hit the join button. That way you will get early access to new videos before they go out to everyone else, and you will get access to membership posts. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.